Language is the means by which we express and exchange thoughts. Language is largely an exercise in definitions, in that within a language we provide labels, words, for actions, for things, for descriptions or qualifiers of those actions or things. The act of creating a language is the act of defining these labels. These ideas that are represented behind these words need to be well understood in order for an individual to communicate. If the speaker and the listener do not have shared understanding, miscommunication is a likely result. And this is a large part of what an education is for an individual going through school, is learning these definitions and the relationships behind them, both operational and static. And by that I mean the operational is how things work together, and the static is basically the core definition. Now, when you get into core definitions, of course, it's this act of categorization that we end up trying to say that this is an apple, and there's many varieties of apples, Red Delicious, Granny Smith, Macintosh, whatever your favorite apple might be, but they all have a basic apple essence, a genetic core, if you will. Let's be a little more abstract. Consider the word truth. What does this word mean? It means what's real, what's right, what's correct, what's accurate. Unfortunately, most truths are open to interpretation. Truth is an idea, ultimately, not something that's real in the world. And that's the problem with most of our words. While you may say an apple is a real thing, the word apple isn't a real thing. It's an idea. It's something that tries to encapsulate the essence of what it means to have an apple or be an apple. With our words, there are pitfalls, though, such as, I'm going to bake an apple pie. Are all apples equivalent in terms of baking an apple pie? As it turns out, no. Certain apples are better suited to being baked. So if I were to tell someone to go to the store and get me apples and making an apple pie, and they were unaware of this distinction amongst apples, they would have a good chance of not purchasing the proper type of apple for the pie to be made. So given that some of the most well understood words still are subject to interpretation, makes me question the whole idea of categorization in general. I found more and more that the attributes of an object or an event are more telling about that object or event than the general categories under which we tend to classify things. So to me, the idea of categorization has been leaned on too much, or its day is done, if you will, and that we need to look at things from what would be a computer science perspective, in that we look at the attributes of these objects and events as opposed to the labels that we put on them, the classifications that we put on them. This treatment of ideas allows for a more scientific approach towards communication, in that we will now be able to precisely express ourselves in clearer terms and better exchange ideas.